Yeah. Yeah.
It might not seem like it at first, but at its core, Family Guy really is about those good old-fashioned values.
On which we used to rely.
Values like friendship. And there's no greater friendship in Family Guy than the one between Stewie, the devious posh baby, and Bryan, the lazy drinking dog.
Showtime!
Is there a more iconic duo out there? Well, except, okay. But regardless of who has come before or after, Bryan and Stewie have found true bromance in one another. It's a friendship for the ages that has been maturing like a fine wine for more than 20 years now. So today at The Binger, we're going to celebrate this decades-long bromance by taking a look at some of Stewie and Bryan's most bromantic adventures.
What are you doing?
Back to the pilot. Bryan is pretty human. He talks, he walks on two legs, he drinks. But there are little moments where his dog side comes out, like in the episode Back to the Pilot where he longs for a tennis ball that he buried somewhere in the backyard. Where exactly, he can't remember. Stewie suggests a very Stewie solution. Why not just go back in time? Bryan agrees and they go up to Stewie's room to warp back. But of course it never actually works like that. It turns out that the exact day that Bryan had buried the ball was January 31st, 1999, also known as the date that Family Guy's pilot aired.
Take it outside, lady.
As Stewie and Bryan look in on their old selves from the past, actual moments from the original episode are recreated in front of their eyes. Even imperfections in the animation are faithfully redone, like Peter's eye bulging out in front of his glasses. In place of the cutaways we usually see in the show, the characters just stand still. After spying on their sloppier-looking 1990s selves, Stewie and Bryan try to go back to the present, but after some complications, they get stuck in the past trying not to make contact with anyone and change the course of the future. Eventually they make it back, but they've changed the world forever. After warning his past self about 9/11, Bryan has inadvertently caused George Bush to lose the 2004 election and create a new Southern Confederacy that starts a new civil war which turns the US into a post-apocalyptic wasteland. They spend the rest of the episode trying to chase their future selves through the past, present, and future to stop the ripple effects of time meddling. In the end, they clean up all the loose time threads and even erase themselves from what Stewie calls the chronological tangent that created us. All's well that ends well.
Ow.
Saving Private Bryan. Although this episode's title, Saving Private Bryan, might have you thinking that it's a parody of the World War II movie where Tom Hanks last stands a tank, well, think again. This episode is actually poking fun at the mid-2000s American military, specifically their engagement in Iraq, while also paying tribute to the 1980s military comedy Stripes.
Think this guy's overdoing it a bit?
It seems that the writers just couldn't pass up the pun. But what about Stewie and Bryan? How did they end up in the army? Well, it all starts with a presentation at Chris's school. Two guys who call themselves Sergeant Extreme and Major Awesome screech onto the stage in Jeeps and start yelling about how cool it is to be in the military. They show off a video full of yachts, money, women in bikinis, and for some reason, the Oscars? At the end, they debut an iconic new slogan.
The U.S. Army. Oh yeah!
When Chris tells the family about it over dinner, Bryan is furious, and the next day he brings Stewie with him to give them a piece of his mind about their false advertising. But while Bryan's outside putting money in the parking meter, Stewie gets excited about a gun and signs them both up, and then they get shipped right off to boot camp. As you might have been able to guess, the army life doesn't exactly agree with Bryan. First of all, he's a dog, and it turns out that the human army boot camp isn't very well suited to dogs. For example, when Bryan catches a bird, eats half of it, and hides the rest under his bed, he gets in trouble. Also, aside from being a dog, he's lazy and sarcastic. Two qualities that their commanding officer does not have much patience for, much less understand. But in the end, Bryan actually passes basic training, largely thanks to his peppering skills.
Fresh pepper?
Yes, thank you.
And they get shipped off to Iraq, where they realize that they don't actually want to be in a war. They try everything to get sent home. They try and use the army's homophobia against them, which doesn't work.
Any room for one more?
The Army's anti-gay stance is just a macho cover-up, apparently. Next, they try to shoot each other in the foot, which also doesn't work out. It turns out that the military's just a little short on personnel, so they're taking whatever they can get. In the end, the thing that actually sends them home is the magic onset of democracy. Road to Europe. This adventure also ends up sending Stewie and Bryan to the Middle East. But this time, it's Saudi Arabia, not Iraq. And it's even more of an accident than the last one.
Uh-oh.
The adventure starts when Stewie is watching TV. He becomes obsessed with this show called Jolly Farm Review, a British kids show where a woman named Mother Maggie watches over 3 kids, a sheep who plays the lute, and a pig with a book containing every book ever. The show is an escape for Stewie, who is starting to get disenchanted with his average American life. He decides that if he finds his way to the BBC studios in London and finagles a way to meet Mother Maggie, then she'll take him in, and he'll grow up happy with a bright, bright future. Being Stewie, he stows away on a plane and Bryan follows. But once they land, they realize that they got the wrong flight. They're in Saudi Arabia, which is 6,000 kilometers away from the BBC. The duo decides to steal a camel to trek across the desert to Stewie's British TV utopia. And to distract the locals, they sing a musical number that perfectly encapsulates their bromance. The song is called We're So Different, and it consists of Stewie and Bryan trading insults about how different they are, which is what makes them so compatible. It's probably a good lesson for people all over the world. Anyway, they sing the song, get the camel, and after a few roadblocks, make it to London and the headquarters of the BBC, where Stewie learns a very hard truth. Jolly Farm Review is just a show, and the actors who play the characters are all foul-mouthed, chain-smoking Brits who couldn't care less about a super-articulate American baby. As Stewie sits in the studio with tears welling up in his eyes, Bryan comes to comfort him as only a true friend could.
You want to take a dump in Mother Maggie's shoes? Okay, let's go take a dump in Mother Maggie's shoes.
Bryan writes a bestseller.
We are returning all of the unsold copies of Faster Than the Speed of Love.
It's no easy task writing a book, especially a good one. Especially when even your number one friend is always teasing you about your so-called novel that you've been working on for years.
Got a nice little story you're working on there, a big novel you've been working on for 3 years.
Even though nobody's seen any of it. But Bryan finally finishes the book, and of course, nobody cares. Well, almost no one. Stewie sees that Bryan is dejected, and he tells him that obviously a nuanced literary book isn't going to sell. People only care about motivational self-help books. Bryan, trying to prove that people are morons who don't know what's good, writes a book called
Wish It, Want It, Do It.
Not only does Stewie manage to get it published by Penguin, it becomes a bestseller. And as the book gets more popular, Bryan becomes more of an arrogant celebrity.
You should know better than this! I told them who you were when I made the reservation.
At the same time, Stewie turns into the classic indignant agent he was also born to be, ruthlessly promoting Bryan's book and even getting him on a real live-action episode of Real Time with Bill Maher.
What is your problem, Snoopy?
Stuck together, torn apart. This episode is Stewie and Bryan at their most connected. As the title of the episode suggests, they actually get stuck together after an accident with some especially powerful glue. Luckily, they're not attached at the hip, only at the hand, so they can still walk, swim, drink martinis, and read. But it's still hard to hide the fact that they're stuck from the rest of the family. And even though Bryan and Stewie are close, this would test even the calmest and most loving of friendships, and theirs is more on the volcanic, erratic side of things.
I'm cleaning myself. You were clean 15 minutes ago.
But their sticky situation ends up being a sort of exposure therapy for the two, and they eventually put aside their differences to save a little girl from an old well.
We did it. Job well done.
Las Vegas is about two things: impulsive decisions and luck. This Bryan-Stewie caper is about those same two things. When Stewie's frustrated by how long it takes to get to Vegas, buying plane tickets, taking a cab to the airport, flying all the way there, taking a cab to the Strip, checking into the hotel, he makes a teleportation machine so that him and Bryan can zip over in the blink of an eye, quicker than a Vegas marriage. But things go wrong when they jump over to Nevada. Instead of just teleporting them, the machine clones them so that there are now two Stewies and two Bryans. One pair gets teleported, and the other takes the traditional route, flying over. The teleported pair enjoy perfect luck, racking up a bunch of cash and having the time of their lives, while the air travel duo end up in a downward spiral of bad fortune. But things get complicated for both of the pairs when some loan sharks start confusing who's who.
Look, don't shoot! You must have us confused with somebody else!
Although in the end, it's all good. The teleported Stewie gets shot by the loan shark and the air travel Bryan ends up jumping from a balcony, while Stewie chickens out. So we're back to where we started with one Bryan and one Stewie.
How does it feel to be the least cultured person at a bus station?
We know that we haven't listed all the best Bryan and Stewie moments, but this video is only 10 minutes long. There's only so much we can do. If we missed any of your favorites, please let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to The Binger.